Her name was Vanessa Cole, and she had spent her entire adult life learning one crucial lesson: money mattered more than anything else. She had grown up poor in a trailer park outside of Nashville, watching her mother work 3 jobs just to keep food on the table and the lights on. She had worn secondhand clothes to school and endured the mockery of wealthier classmates. She had seen her mother's hands become rough and worn from endless labor, had watched hope fade from her eyes as years of struggle took their toll. Vanessa could still remember specific moments from her childhood that had shaped her relationship with money. Like the time she was 8 years old and desperately wanted a Barbie doll that all her classmates had. Her mother had saved for 3 months to buy it for her birthday, and Vanessa had seen the pride and exhaustion in her eyes when she presented the wrapped gift. But the doll had been the wrong one, not the special edition the other girls had, and Vanessa had cried with disappointment. She could still see the hurt on her mother's face, the way something had broken inside her when she realized her sacrifice wasn't enough. Or the time in high school when Vanessa had been invited to a classmate's birthday party at their mansion. She had walked through rooms bigger than her entire trailer, had seen a kitchen with appliances that cost more than her mother made in a year, had watched these wealthy families move through their abundant life with casual ease. She had felt so small, so poor, so utterly inadequate. She had left the party early, claiming she felt sick, and had cried the entire bus ride home. Those moments had accumulated over the years, building a wall of shame and determination around her heart. Vanessa swore she would never live like that, never struggle, never scrape by, never sacrifice everything just to survive. She would find a way out, and that way out would be through a man with money. It wasn't romantic, but it was practical, and Vanessa had learned early that practicality mattered more than romance. Her mother had tried to teach her different lessons. "Love is what matters, baby," she would say as they ate dinner at their small table, simple food stretched to last as long as possible. "We don't have much, but we have each other. That's what's real." But Vanessa had watched her mother's body break down from hard work, had seen the worry lines deepen around her eyes, had felt the stress that permeated their small home like a fog. Love hadn't protected them from poverty. Love hadn't made their lives easier or better. Love was, Vanessa decided, a luxury that poor people told themselves mattered to make up for everything they didn't have. At 28, Vanessa had perfected the art of appearing wealthy while having nothing. She knew how to buy designer clothes at consignment shops, how to spot the pieces that looked expensive and would last. She knew how to do her own hair and makeup to look professionally styled. She knew how to carry herself with confidence, to walk into expensive restaurants and hotels as if she belonged there. She had cultivated an image of sophistication and elegance that suggested old money, even though she barely had enough to cover rent on her small apartment. She worked as a personal shopper at an upscale department store, a job that gave her access to wealthy clients and the appearance of success. The store itself was beautiful, all marble floors and crystal chandeliers, and Vanessa had fought hard to get the position. She had studied fashion magazines and designer collections, had learned to recognize quality and style, had practiced the kind of refined service that wealthy clients expected. Her coworkers were a mix of people. Some, like her, were playing a part, pretending to be more successful than they were. Others came from money themselves and were just working for fun or experience. Vanessa had learned to blend in, to mirror their speech patterns and mannerisms, to hide her trailer park origins behind careful pronunciation and cultivated tastes. She networked constantly, attending gallery openings and charity events, always on the lookout for the right opportunity, the right man, the ticket to the life she desperately wanted. She had dated several wealthy men over the years, always hoping one of them would be the one, the man who would marry her and give her the security she craved. But something always went wrong. They would sense her desperation, or meet someone wealthier and more refined, or simply get bored and move on. Each failed relationship had made Vanessa more determined and more calculated. She studied what had gone wrong, adjusted her approach, refined her technique. She learned to hide her eagerness, to play hard to get, to make men feel like they were pursuing her rather than the other way around. She learned to be whatever they wanted her to be, intellectual with the academics, adventurous with the risk-takers, sophisticated with the old money families. That's where she met Marcus Hamilton. He walked into the store one afternoon looking for a gift for his mother, and Vanessa immediately recognized the signs of serious wealth. His watch was a Patek Philippe, easily worth 6 figures. His shoes were custom Italian leather, the kind that required a 6-month wait and a personal fitting. His suit was bespoke, tailored perfectly to his athletic frame. Even the way he carried himself spoke of someone who had never worried about money a day in his life. But there was something else about Marcus, something that set him apart from other wealthy men Vanessa had encountered. He seemed genuinely kind, treating the security guard at the door with the same courtesy he showed to the store manager. He moved through the space with confidence, but without arrogance, comfortable in his wealth, but not defined by it. Marcus was 35, handsome in a polished way, with dark hair just beginning to gray at the temples, and eyes that were intelligent and appraising. He had laugh lines around his eyes and mouth, suggesting someone who smiled often and genuinely. He was charming, but not overly friendly, sophisticated without being pretentious. When Vanessa approached to help him, he gave her his full attention in a way that made her feel seen and valued. "I need something special," he said, his voice warm and cultured. "My mother is impossible to shop for. She has everything, and she's very particular about quality and taste. I'm hoping you can help me find something she'll actually appreciate." Vanessa smiled, the practiced smile that was warm but not too eager. "Tell me about her. What does she love? What makes her happy?" Sometimes the best gifts aren't the most expensive, but the most thoughtful. They spent an hour talking, and Vanessa used every trick she had learned. She listened intently, asked thoughtful questions, made suggestions that showed both taste and consideration. She learned that his mother loved soft textures and muted colors, that she was elegant but understated, that she valued quality over flash. Vanessa pulled several options, explaining the craftsmanship and origins of each piece, helping Marcus understand why each might be perfect. Marcus was engaged and appreciative, asking intelligent questions and valuing her expertise. He didn't try to show off his knowledge or impress her with his wealth. He was just a man trying to find the perfect gift for his mother, and he was treating Vanessa like a trusted advisor rather than just a saleswoman. By the time Marcus left with an exquisite cashmere shawl and matching gloves, wrapped beautifully and accompanied by a thoughtful note that Vanessa had helped him compose, he had also left with Vanessa's business card and a promise to call her for help with future shopping needs. "You have a real gift for this," he said as he prepared to leave. "Not just knowing about products, but understanding people, understanding what would make them happy. That's rare and valuable." Vanessa felt a flush of genuine pleasure at the compliment. "Thank you," she said. "I really enjoy helping people find the perfect thing. There's something satisfying about matching the right gift to the right person." Marcus looked at her with those intelligent eyes, and Vanessa had the uncomfortable feeling that he was seeing past her professional facade to something deeper. Then he smiled, thanked her again, and left. Vanessa watched him go, already planning her next move if he called. He called 3 days later, but not about shopping. He asked her to dinner, and Vanessa felt a surge of triumph mixed with nerves. This was it, the opportunity she had been waiting for. She said yes with carefully calibrated enthusiasm. Not too eager, not too cool, just right. Their first date was at one of the most expensive restaurants in the city, the kind of place where the menu had no prices and the wine list was thicker than a phone book. Vanessa had researched the restaurant beforehand, studying the menu online, reading reviews, preparing herself to navigate the experience smoothly. Marcus ordered confidently, chose wine with knowledge and care, and treated the staff with respect and generous tips. All good signs, Vanessa noted. He had money, knew how to spend it, and wasn't arrogant about it. He held doors, pulled out her chair, made her feel valued and special. He was attentive without being overbearing, interested without being intrusive. Over dinner, Marcus told her about his business. He was in private equity, he said, managing investments for high net worth individuals. He had started his own firm 5 years ago after working for larger companies, and it had grown quickly. He talked about the challenge and satisfaction of helping people grow their wealth, of finding good opportunities and managing risk. "It sounds fascinating," Vanessa said, and she meant it. She had always been interested in money, in how people made it and kept it. "What made you want to start your own firm rather than staying with a larger company?" Marcus considered the question. "Control, I think," he said, "and the ability to work with clients the way I thought was right, rather than following someone else's playbook. I wanted to build something that reflected my values, that treated clients as partners rather than just sources of revenue." They talked for 3 hours, the restaurant emptying around them as the evening grew late. Marcus asked about her work, and Vanessa shared carefully curated information about herself. She talked about helping clients find perfect items, about the satisfaction of matching people with things they would treasure. She positioned her job as a choice, something she did because she loved it, not because she needed the money. She was careful about what she revealed, dropping hints about a comfortable background without being specific. She mentioned traveling, though the trips she described had actually been taken by friends and she had just seen the photos. She talked about art and culture, interests she had cultivated specifically to appeal to wealthy men. She was charming and attentive, laughing at his jokes, asking intelligent questions, being exactly what she knew successful men wanted: beautiful, interested, and not too demanding. Marcus was clearly interested. He called her the next day, and the day after that. They went to gallery openings and theater performances, to expensive restaurants and exclusive clubs. Marcus introduced her to his world, and Vanessa fit herself into it seamlessly. She researched the artists whose work he collected, learned about wine and fine dining, studied the customs and expectations of the wealthy elite. She met his friends, other successful professionals and business owners, and she charmed them too. She learned their names and remembered details about their lives, asked follow-up questions about things they had mentioned weeks earlier, made them feel valued and heard. She became known in his circle as Marcus's lovely girlfriend, the woman with impeccable taste and genuine warmth. But underneath the performance, Vanessa was always calculating, always assessing. She watched how Marcus spent money, trying to gauge the depth of his wealth. She noticed that he was generous but not wasteful, that he appreciated quality but didn't need to show off. These were good signs, suggesting old money, or at least money that was secure and substantial. She also watched his relationships with other women, looking for signs of competition or interest. But Marcus seemed focused on her, introducing her as his girlfriend, including her in his plans, making it clear that he was serious about their relationship. Vanessa allowed herself to feel hopeful. This could be it, the security she had been seeking for so long. 6 weeks into their relationship, Marcus invited her to spend a weekend at his beach house. Vanessa said yes, seeing it as a crucial step forward. The house was extraordinary, a modern architectural masterpiece right on the beach, with floor-to-ceiling windows and furnishings that were both beautiful and clearly expensive. She walked through the rooms trying not to look too impressed, trying to act like she was accustomed to such luxury. That weekend, Marcus was attentive and romantic. They walked on the beach at sunset, Marcus holding her hand and talking about his dreams for the future. They cooked together in his restaurant-quality kitchen, a meal that was simple but delicious, working side by side with easy companionship. They made love in his enormous bed, with ocean sounds drifting through the windows, and Marcus was gentle and passionate, making Vanessa feel desired and cherished. On Sunday morning, as they had coffee on the deck overlooking the ocean, Marcus took her hand. "I know this is fast," he said, "but I've never felt this way about anyone. You're different from other women I've dated. You're genuine, thoughtful, real. I can see a future with you, Vanessa. I can see us building something together." Vanessa's heart raced. This was it, the moment she had been working toward. She squeezed his hand and said, with emotion that was at least partially genuine, "I feel the same way. Being with you feels right, like I've finally found where I belong." Over the next 3 months, their relationship intensified. Marcus talked about the future constantly, about trips they would take to Europe and Asia, about experiences they would share. He bought her expensive gifts, jewelry and designer clothes, always presented with romantic flair. A diamond bracelet after 1 month, a designer handbag after 2, pearl earrings after 3. Each gift was thoughtful and beautiful, and Vanessa wore them with genuine pleasure, feeling like she was finally living the life she was meant to have. But there were moments when she questioned what she was doing, when she wondered if she was being fair to Marcus by pursuing him primarily for his money. He was kind and intelligent, and she enjoyed his company. There were times when she forgot to calculate and just enjoyed being with him, laughing at his jokes, listening to his stories, feeling connected to him in ways that had nothing to do with his bank account. But she pushed those thoughts away, telling herself not to be foolish. He was getting something too, wasn't he? She was beautiful, charming, the perfect companion for his lifestyle. It was a transaction, yes, but one that benefited them both. He got a lovely girlfriend who fit into his world, and she got security and comfort. That was fair, wasn't it? 4 months after they met, Marcus proposed. He did it at the beach house, at sunset, with a ring that was both tasteful and clearly expensive. A 3-carat diamond in a platinum setting, elegant and substantial. He got down on one knee in the sand and said, "Vanessa, you've brought joy and light into my life. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" Vanessa said yes, and as Marcus slipped the ring on her finger and pulled her into his arms, she felt triumph mixed with something else, something that might have been genuine affection. She had done it. She had secured the life she wanted, the security she craved, the escape from poverty and struggle. She was going to marry a rich man, and she would never have to worry about money again. The wedding was planned quickly, at Marcus's insistence. "We're not getting any younger," he said with a laugh. "Why wait when we know what we want? Besides, I can't wait to make you my wife. I want to start our life together as soon as possible." Vanessa was happy to agree. The sooner they were married, the sooner her future was secure. They set the date for 3 months away and began planning. Marcus insisted on handling most of the arrangements, hiring the best wedding planner in the city and telling Vanessa to just focus on enjoying the process. The preparations were a whirlwind. Vanessa chose a wedding dress that cost more than a year of her salary, a designer gown that made her look like a princess. She had fittings and alterations, meetings with florists and caterers, tastings and consultations. Everything was first class, everything was perfect, everything was exactly what she had always dreamed a wedding should be. Her mother came to one of the dress fittings, looking uncomfortable in the upscale bridal salon, overwhelmed by the opulence and the fawning attention of the staff. She watched as Vanessa modeled the dress, and there was something sad in her eyes. "You look beautiful, baby," she said, "like a fairy tale princess." "Thank you, Mama," Vanessa said, twirling in front of the mirror. "Can you believe this is really happening? I'm going to marry Marcus and have this amazing life." Her mother was quiet for a moment. "Are you sure about this, honey? Do you love him?" The question irritated Vanessa. "Of course I do. He's wonderful. I'm lucky to have found him." Her mother looked at her with sad, knowing eyes, the eyes of someone who had seen too much and understood too well. "Just make sure you know what you're getting into. Money isn't everything, baby. I know we didn't have much, but we had love. Make sure you have that too. Make sure you're marrying him for the right reasons, not just because you're afraid of being poor." "I'm marrying him because I love him," Vanessa insisted, though even to her own ears the words sounded hollow. "And because we're going to have a wonderful life together. Why can't you just be happy for me?" "I am happy for you," her mother said gently. "I just want to make sure you're happy for the right reasons. That's all." Vanessa pushed away the uncomfortable feeling her mother's words created. Her mother didn't understand. She had spent her life struggling because she had married for love instead of security. Vanessa was smarter than that. She was making the right choice, ensuring she would never have to live the way her mother had lived. The wedding day arrived, and it was everything Vanessa had dreamed of. 200 guests at a luxury hotel, the ballroom transformed into an elegant wonderland with thousands of white roses and crystal chandeliers. Designer dress, gourmet food, live band, the works. Marcus spared no expense, and Vanessa felt like a princess, like she had finally arrived at the destination she had been journeying toward her whole life. As she walked down the aisle on her mother's arm, she saw Marcus waiting for her at the altar, handsome in his custom tuxedo, his eyes bright with emotion. In that moment, Vanessa let herself believe that maybe this was about more than money, that maybe she did love him, that maybe they could be genuinely happy together. They exchanged vows, and Marcus's voice was thick with emotion as he promised to love and cherish her for the rest of his life. Vanessa repeated the words, meaning them as much as she was capable of meaning anything at that moment. And when the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, and Marcus kissed her to thunderous applause, Vanessa felt a surge of genuine happiness. The reception was lavish and perfect. They danced and laughed and celebrated, surrounded by people who seemed genuinely happy for them. Marcus's friends toasted to their happiness, and even Vanessa's mother seemed to relax and enjoy the celebration, though Vanessa caught her wiping away tears more than once. At the end of the night, Marcus and Vanessa left in a luxury car decorated with ribbons and flowers, heading to a 5-star hotel for their wedding night, before flying out to the Maldives the next day. In the hotel suite, Marcus was tender and passionate, and Vanessa let herself get lost in the moment, in the feeling of being desired and valued and loved. "I'm the luckiest man in the world," Marcus whispered as they lay together afterward. "I still can't believe you're my wife." "I can't believe it either," Vanessa said, and that was true in more ways than one. The honeymoon was everything Vanessa had dreamed of. 2 weeks in the Maldives, staying in an overwater bungalow that cost thousands per night. Private beaches, personal butler, spa treatments, gourmet meals, complete luxury. The ocean was impossibly blue, the sand white as sugar, the weather perfect every single day. It was like living in a postcard, in a fantasy world where nothing could go wrong. Marcus was attentive and romantic, and Vanessa found herself genuinely enjoying his company. They talked for hours, lying on the beach or floating in the warm ocean water. They laughed together, made love, shared intimate moments that felt real and meaningful. There were times when Vanessa forgot about money entirely, when she was just a woman on her honeymoon with the man who seemed to adore her. But on their last night in the Maldives, as they had dinner on their private deck with the sun setting over the Indian Ocean, Marcus's demeanor changed. He became quiet and distant, his usual confidence replaced by something that looked like anxiety or fear. Vanessa noticed, but didn't comment, thinking maybe he was just sad that their perfect honeymoon was ending. "These 2 weeks have been perfect," he said finally, his voice strained. "I wish we could stay forever. I wish we never had to go back to reality." "Why can't we?" Vanessa joked, trying to lighten the mood. "We could just live here, never go back to reality, just stay in paradise forever." Marcus's expression changed slightly, something flickering across his face that might have been worry or sadness or guilt. "We do have to go back eventually," he said. "And when we do, there are some things we need to talk about. Some things I need to tell you. Important things." "What things?" Vanessa asked, feeling a flutter of unease in her stomach. "Marcus, you're scaring me. What's wrong?" Marcus shook his head, not meeting her eyes. "Not tonight. Tonight is perfect. Let's just enjoy this moment. We'll talk when we get home. I promise I'll tell you everything then." Vanessa felt a chill despite the warm tropical air. Something was wrong, something Marcus was hiding. But she forced a smile and agreed to wait, not wanting to ruin their last night in paradise with difficult conversations. They flew back to the city 2 days later, first class, with champagne and luxury service. But Vanessa noticed that Marcus seemed tense, distracted, not his usual confident self. He stared out the window for long periods, barely touching his champagne, lost in thoughts he wouldn't share. When she asked if he was okay, he assured her everything was fine, just work stress, nothing for her to worry about. But the reassurance felt hollow, and Vanessa's unease grew with each passing hour. They arrived at Marcus's penthouse, what was now their penthouse, late in the evening. The space looked exactly as they had left it, but somehow it felt different, less welcoming, charged with tension. Vanessa was exhausted from travel and the growing anxiety, wanting nothing more than to unpack and sleep in their own bed and forget about Marcus's mysterious need to talk. But Marcus poured them both drinks, expensive scotch from his personal collection, and asked her to sit down, his expression serious in a way that made Vanessa's stomach clench with worry. She sat on the designer couch they had picked out together, holding her untouched drink, watching as Marcus paced back and forth, clearly struggling with how to begin. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice sharper than she intended. "Marcus, you're scaring me. Just tell me what's going on." He sat across from her, holding his glass but not drinking, his eyes fixed on the amber liquid as if it held answers to impossible questions. "Vanessa, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you before we got married, but I kept hoping the situation would resolve itself, that I wouldn't have to burden you with it. I kept thinking if I could just close one deal, just turn one thing around, everything would be fine and you would never have to know." What situation? Vanessa asked, her heart beginning to race, dread pooling in her stomach. What are you talking about? Marcus took a deep breath, and when he finally looked at her, his eyes were filled with shame and fear. My business is failing. Has been failing for about a year now. I made some bad investments, trusted the wrong people, made mistakes I thought I could fix. I've been trying to turn things around to save the company, but it's gotten worse instead of better. Much worse. Vanessa felt like the floor was tilting beneath her, like the room was spinning. What do you mean worse? How bad is it? I'm bankrupt, Marcus said quietly, the words dropping like stones into the silence. Or about to be. The creditors are circling. The penthouse is mortgaged to the hilt. The beach house, too. The cars, the art collection, everything. It's all leveraged, all borrowed against, all about to be seized to pay debts. I've been holding on by my fingernails, but I can't anymore. I'm out of options, out of time, out of everything. Vanessa couldn't process what she was hearing. The words didn't make sense, couldn't be real. That's not possible, she said, her voice rising. We just spent 2 weeks in the Maldives. You just threw a wedding that cost more than most people make in a year. You gave me a 3-carat diamond ring. How can you be bankrupt? Credit cards, Marcus said, his voice hollow. Maxed out credit cards that I have no way to pay back. The Maldives, the wedding, the ring, all of it on credit. I kept thinking I could fix this, that one deal would come through and save everything. I thought if I could just keep things together long enough, everything would work out. But it didn't happen. And now we're back from our honeymoon, and I have to face reality. We have to face reality. Vanessa stood up, her drink sloshing in the glass, her mind reeling. She walked to the enormous windows overlooking the city, the view that had seemed so impressive when Marcus first brought her here, the view that now represented nothing but lies and deception. You lied to me, she said, her voice shaking with rage and disbelief. You married me under false pretenses. You let me think you were rich when you're actually broke. You let me plan my future around your wealth when you had nothing. I didn't lie, Marcus said, and there was desperation in his voice now. Everything I told you about my business was true. It just went bad. And I kept hoping I could fix it before you had to know. I wanted to protect you from this. I wanted to give you the wedding you deserved, the honeymoon, the life you wanted, even if it was just for a little while. Vanessa turned to face him, anger rising hot and sharp, burning away the shock. Protect me? You married me knowing you were about to lose everything? What was your plan, Marcus? What did you think would happen when I found out? Did you think I would just accept it? Did you think I would be okay with this? I thought, Marcus said, and his voice broke slightly, tears forming in his eyes. I thought maybe if I told you after we were married, after you had committed to me, you might stay anyway. I thought maybe you loved me enough to weather this with me, to help me rebuild. I know it's not fair. I know it's terrible. But I love you, Vanessa. I really do. I fell in love with you the moment I met you. And everything I've done since then has been motivated by that love. And I hoped, foolishly maybe, that you felt the same way. That love would be enough. Vanessa laughed, a bitter, harsh sound that echoed in the expensive room. Love? You don't know anything about love. Love is honest. Love is partnership. Love is trust. What you did is manipulation and deception. You trapped me, in this marriage with lies. She was shaking now, with anger and shock, and something that felt horribly like betrayal. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had thought she was manipulating him, marrying him for his money, while he thought she loved her. But he had been manipulating her too, hiding his financial ruin, trapping her in a marriage built on lies. They had both been playing games, both deceiving each other, both desperate in their own ways. "I need to think," she said, her voice cold. "I can't be here right now. I need space. I need to figure out what this means." "Vanessa, please," Marcus stood up, reaching for her. "Can we just talk about this? Can we figure this out together?" "There's nothing to figure out," Vanessa said, pulling away from him. "You lied to me about the most fundamental thing. I married you thinking you were wealthy, thinking you could provide security, thinking my future was taken care of. Instead, I'm married to a bankrupt liar who's dragged me into his financial disaster." She grabbed her purse, not bothering to take anything else, and headed for the door. Marcus called her name, his voice breaking, but she didn't turn around. She couldn't look at him, couldn't bear to see the pain in his eyes when she felt so betrayed and angry and devastated. She went down to the street and started walking, not knowing where she was going, just needing to move, to get away, to process what had just happened. The city was quiet, late enough that most people were home, and Vanessa walked through empty streets with tears streaming down her face. Everything she had worked for, everything she had planned, every dream she had nurtured was crumbling around her. She had married a rich man to secure her future, and instead, she had married a bankrupt liar who had trapped her in his financial disaster. She would be tied to his debts now, wouldn't she? As his wife, his bankruptcy would affect her credit, her finances, everything. She had thought she was escaping poverty, but instead, she had jumped into a different kind of trap. Vanessa walked for hours through neighborhoods that became progressively less safe, but she barely noticed. Her mind was spinning with implications and consequences. She could get a divorce, obviously. The marriage was based on fraud. Any judge would grant her an annulment. But that would leave her right back where she started. Back to her small apartment and her job at the department store. Back to struggling and scraping by. Worse, she would be known as the woman who married for money and got nothing, the gold digger who failed. The humiliation of it all burned through her. She had been so careful, so strategic, so calculated. She had chosen Marcus specifically because he seemed stable and secure, because every sign pointed to genuine wealth. How had she missed the truth? How had she let herself be fooled? She found herself in a 24-hour diner, the kind of cheap place she usually avoided, and ordered coffee she didn't want, just to have a place to sit and think. The waitress was kind, not asking questions, just refilling her cup periodically as Vanessa sat and stared out the window. The irony of her situation was almost funny, in a dark, twisted way. She had spent years cultivating an image of wealth while having nothing, learning to move through wealthy spaces, pretending to be something she wasn't. And she had married a man who had done the exact same thing. They had both been pretending, both deceiving, both desperate to appear as something they weren't. The question was, what did she do now? Did she stay and try to make it work, to help Marcus rebuild? The thought made her feel sick. She hadn't signed up for poverty, for struggle, for the very life she had been trying to escape. Did she leave immediately, file for divorce, cut her losses? But that meant admitting defeat, accepting that she was right back where she started after years of effort. Vanessa stayed in the diner until dawn, drinking bad coffee and watching the city wake up around her. Workers hurried to early shifts, delivery trucks rumbled past. The world continued its relentless motion while her own life had come to a grinding halt. By the time the sun was fully up, she had made a decision. She would go back to the penthouse, get the full truth about Marcus's situation, demand every detail, and then decide what to do based on facts rather than emotion. When she returned to the penthouse, she found Marcus exactly where she had left him, still sitting in the living room, looking like he hadn't moved all night. He looked exhausted and defeated, his expensive clothes rumpled, his face haggard. He looked up when she came in, and hope and fear warred in his expression. "I need to know everything," Vanessa said without preamble, sitting down across from him. "Every single detail of the financial situation. What you owe, to whom, what's going to happen next, when, how bad it really is. All of it. No more secrets, no more half-truths. Everything." Marcus nodded, and over the next hour he laid out the full extent of his disaster in painful detail. He was $3 million in debt to various creditors, investors, and lending institutions. The penthouse, which Vanessa had thought he owned outright, would be foreclosed on within 2 months unless he could somehow come up with a massive payment, which he couldn't. The beach house, same situation, maybe 3 months before foreclosure. His cars would be repossessed within weeks. His art collection, which he had assured her was worth millions, was already being prepared for auction and wouldn't even cover a fraction of what he owed. His business was being liquidated, the assets sold off to pay creditors. There were lawyers and accountants involved, bankruptcy proceedings being filed, a whole complicated legal mess that would take months or even years to fully resolve. Every single thing she had thought was his turned out to be borrowed, mortgaged, leveraged against future earnings that would never materialize. "And what about you personally?" Vanessa asked when he was done, her voice flat and emotionless. "After all this is settled, after they've taken everything, what will you have?" Marcus shrugged, looking completely broken. "Whatever I can make starting over. I'll have to get a regular job, probably something in consulting or finance if anyone will hire me after this bankruptcy. Find a place I can afford, probably a small apartment somewhere. Try to rebuild my career from the ground up. It's going to take years to dig out of this hole, if I ever can. Maybe 10 years, maybe longer. I'll be starting from nothing at 35, which is not where I ever thought I'd be." "And me?" Vanessa asked. "What happens to me in all this? Am I liable for your debts? Will this affect my credit? What's my legal exposure here?" Marcus had clearly talked to lawyers about this. "The good news is that most of the debt is in my name alone, predating our marriage. As long as you haven't co-signed anything or added your name to any accounts, which you haven't, you should be somewhat protected. But being married to someone in bankruptcy isn't great. It will affect your ability to get credit together, to buy a house together, things like that. And depending on state laws, creditors might be able to come after household assets. Though, again, most of this predates the marriage, so you have some protection. So basically, you've ruined my financial future, along with yours," Vanessa said bitterly. "That's up to you," Marcus said quietly. "If you want a divorce, an annulment, I'll understand completely. You married me under false pretenses, thinking I was wealthy when I was actually broke. You have every right to walk away. I won't fight it, won't contest it, won't make it difficult. I'll sign whatever papers you want. Or," and his voice became softer, more hopeful, "or you could stay. We could face this together, start over together, build something real together, not based on money or image, but on genuine partnership." Vanessa stared at him in disbelief. You can't be serious. You actually want me to stay with you? To be poor with you? To struggle and scrape by while you spend years paying off debts you accumulated, deceiving everyone, including me? I want you to stay with me because you want to, Marcus said, and there was a desperate sincerity in his voice that was almost painful to hear. Not because of money, not because of what I can give you materially, but because of us. Because underneath all the money and the lifestyle and the pretense, there's something real between us. I felt it, and I think you did too. Because of what we could be to each other if money wasn't part of the equation at all. There is no us without money, Vanessa said harshly, needing him to understand this fundamental truth. That's what you don't understand. That's what you've never understood. I didn't marry you for love or partnership or any of that romantic nonsense. I married you for security, for stability, for a future where I wouldn't have to worry about bills or struggle to survive. I married you for the life you could give me. Without that, there's no reason for me to stay. There's literally nothing here for me. Marcus flinched as if she had physically struck him. So it was all about money? The whole time? Everything we shared? Every moment we had together? It was just about money? I was never a person to you, just a bank account. What did you think it was about? Vanessa demanded, her voice rising. Did you really think I fell madly in love with you in 6 weeks? That I just happened to feel this overwhelming connection to a man who happened to be rich? Don't be naive, Marcus. You're a smart man. You had to know what this was. I thought there was something real between us, Marcus said quietly, and now tears were falling down his face. I thought beneath the money and the lifestyle, beneath the surface attraction, there was genuine affection, genuine connection, genuine caring. I thought you enjoyed my company, liked who I was as a person, valued what we had together beyond just the material benefits. I thought you cared about me, not just what I had. Vanessa felt something twist uncomfortably in her chest, something that might have been guilt or shame or recognition of an uncomfortable truth. There was a part of her that had cared about Marcus, she realized now. A part that had enjoyed his company, his intelligence, his humor, his kindness. But that part had been so small compared to her relief at finding financial security, compared to her joy at finally having the wealthy life she wanted. The affection she felt for him as a person had been completely overshadowed by her appreciation for what he could provide. I can't do this, she said, standing up abruptly, unable to sit across from him any longer, unable to bear the pain in his eyes. I can't be poor, Marcus. I grew up poor. I spent my entire childhood watching my mother work herself literally to death just to survive. I watched her hands become gnarled from hard work, watched her health deteriorate from stress, watched hope die in her eyes year by year. I swore on everything I hold sacred that I would never live like that. I can't go back to struggling and worrying and making do with less. I just can't. So you're leaving? Marcus said flatly, his voice devoid of emotion now, as if he had moved past pain into numbness. I'm leaving, Vanessa confirmed, her own voice cold. I'll file for divorce immediately, or annulment, whatever makes the most sense legally to protect myself. I'll contact a lawyer today. And that's it? Marcus stood up slowly, and there was anger in his face now, cutting through the pain and sadness. You're just going to walk away? Move on to the next rich guy? Start this whole charade over again? Find another wealthy man to target, to manipulate, to use for his money? What else would you have me do? Vanessa demanded, feeling defensive and angry and something else she didn't want to name. Stay here and be noble and poor with you? Pretend that love is enough when I know for an absolute fact that it's not? My mother loved my father, and he left her anyway, left us both. She loved me, and it didn't make us any less poor, didn't put food on the table or keep the lights on. Love doesn't pay bills, Marcus. Love doesn't provide security. Love is a luxury that only rich people can afford, something pretty to have when all your actual needs are already met. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard, Marcus said, and his voice was thick with emotion, with disappointment and disillusionment. You're so afraid of being poor that you've made yourself poor in every way that actually matters. You have no real relationships because you're always calculating the benefit. You have no real connection because you're always measuring what people can give you. You have no real purpose beyond accumulating money and security. That's not living, Vanessa. That's just surviving with better furniture and nicer clothes. His words stung because there was truth in them. Truth Vanessa didn't want to acknowledge or examine. "Don't pretend you're better than me," she said defensively, lashing out to protect herself from his uncomfortable observations. "You lied to me just as much as I lied to you, probably more. You married me knowing you were bankrupt, knowing you were trapping me in your financial disaster, knowing I would never have agreed if I'd known the truth. How is that any better than what I did? At least I was honest about wanting security. You pretended to have something you didn't." "It's not better," Marcus admitted, his shoulders sagging with the weight of his mistakes. "I was wrong to deceive you. Absolutely wrong. I was desperate and scared, and I made terrible choices, motivated by selfishness and fear. But at least I was motivated by love, by genuinely wanting to be with you, by hoping we could build something real together. You were motivated purely by greed, by self-interest, by a mercenary approach to relationships that treats people as resources to be exploited." "Self-preservation," Vanessa corrected coldly. "Not greed. Self-preservation. There's a difference." "Call it whatever you want to make yourself feel better," Marcus said tiredly, all the fight draining out of him. "The result is the same. You're leaving, and I'm alone with my mistakes, and neither of us got what we wanted from this disaster of a marriage." Vanessa grabbed her purse and coat and headed for the door one more time. She would go to a hotel, any hotel, start making arrangements to extricate herself from this mess. But at the door, she paused and turned back, compelled by something she couldn't quite name, to offer some small comfort or closure. "For what it's worth," she said, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't who you thought I was. I'm sorry I can't be what you need. I'm sorry this all ended so badly for both of us." "I'm sorry too," Marcus said, and his voice was gentle despite everything. "Sorry I wasn't rich enough to keep you. Sorry that the only thing I have to offer, genuine love and partnership, isn't valuable enough for you to want. Sorry that we both wasted time on a relationship that was doomed from the start, because we were both pretending to be something we weren't." Vanessa left without responding, unable to find words that would make any of this better or different. She went down to the street, hailed a cab, and gave the driver the name of a hotel she knew she couldn't really afford, but would charge on her credit card anyway, because what did it matter now? She checked in, went to her room, locked the door, and finally let herself cry. She cried for the future she had lost, for the security that had turned out to be an illusion, for the years of effort that had come to nothing. She cried for Marcus, for the hurt in his eyes, for the love he had offered that she couldn't accept. She cried for herself, for who she was, for the choices she had made, for the person she had become in her desperate pursuit of money and security. But most of all, She cried because somewhere deep down, beneath all her anger and disappointment and fear, she knew Marcus had been right about her. She was poor in every way that mattered. She had some money in her bank account from her job and her careful savings, but she was poor in relationships, poor in genuine connection, poor in purpose and meaning. She had nothing real, nothing that would sustain her through actual hardship, nothing that gave her life value beyond material accumulation. She had traded the possibility of genuine human connection for the pursuit of financial security, and in doing so had ensured she would have neither. She was alone, would always be alone, because she was incapable of the vulnerability and trust that real relationships required. She would spend her life chasing wealthy men, always calculating, always performing, never genuinely connecting, never truly loved, and never truly loving in return. And the worst part, the part that made her cry hardest, was that she didn't know how to be any different. Fear had shaped her so completely, had become so fundamental to who she was, that she couldn't imagine living any other way. The terror of poverty was so deeply embedded in her psyche that it overrode everything else, every other consideration, every other possibility. Vanessa spent 3 days in that hotel room, barely eating, barely sleeping, just thinking about her life and her choices and what came next. She called a lawyer and started divorce proceedings, providing details about Marcus's deception and her desire for an annulment. The lawyer was sympathetic but realistic, explaining the process and timeline, making it clear that even though the marriage had been brief, ending it would still take time and money. She looked at apartments she could afford on her salary, depressing small studios that reminded her of the poverty she had been trying to escape. She calculated her finances, figuring out how long she could survive on her savings if she lost her job, how much she would need to rebuild her life. She went back to work at the department store, slipping back into her old routines as if the past months with Marcus had been a dream. Or, more accurately, a nightmare. Her coworkers asked about the honeymoon, about married life, and Vanessa gave vague, brief answers, not ready to explain that her marriage had ended almost as soon as it had begun. But something fundamental had changed inside her. Vanessa found herself unable to play the game the way she used to. When wealthy clients came in, she helped them efficiently and professionally, but without the calculation and strategy that used to drive every interaction. When a handsome, obviously wealthy man tried to flirt with her while buying a gift, clearly fishing for her phone number, she felt nothing but tired disinterest and couldn't muster the energy to reciprocate. Marcus's words haunted her, playing on repeat in her mind during quiet moments. You're so afraid of being poor that you've made yourself poor in every way that matters. Was that true? Had she sacrificed everything real and valuable in pursuit of money? Had she become so focused on financial security that she had forgotten to build an actual life worth living? Her mother called one evening, about 2 weeks after Vanessa had left Marcus. Word had gotten around their small community, and her mother had heard rumors. "I heard about Marcus," she said gently, "about the bankruptcy." "Are you okay, baby?" "I'm fine," Vanessa said automatically, the standard response she gave everyone. "No, you're not," her mother said, with the certainty of someone who knew her daughter too well. "You don't have to pretend with me. I know you married him for money, baby. I knew that from the beginning. And I know you must be devastated that it didn't work out the way you planned." Vanessa felt tears start again, the seemingly endless supply replenishing itself. "I'm sorry, Mom. I know you wanted me to marry for love, like you did. I know I disappointed you." "You didn't disappoint me," her mother said firmly. I never wanted you to be like me, honey. I wanted you to be smarter, to make better choices, to have a better life. I wanted you to learn from my mistakes. If marrying Marcus for money was what you thought would make you happy, I would have supported that. But I don't think it did make you happy, even before you found out about the bankruptcy. I think you've been chasing something that doesn't actually exist." "What do you mean?" Vanessa asked, though she suspected she knew. Her mother sighed, a long, weary sound. "When you were little, you saw me struggle, and you decided that money was the answer to everything. That if we just had more money, your father wouldn't have left. I wouldn't have had to work so hard. Everything would have been fine. But honey, money wasn't our problem. Money never has been the real problem. Your father leaving, his addiction, his inability to be a good partner and father, that was the problem. Money wouldn't have fixed him. Money wouldn't have made him stay, or made him love us, or made him be who we needed him to be." Vanessa had never thought about it that way, had never separated the poverty from her father's abandonment in her mind. She had always seen them as one connected thing, the lack of money causing, or at least contributing to, everything else that went wrong. But her mother was right. The real pain of her childhood hadn't come from wearing secondhand clothes or eating simple food. It had come from her father's absence, from his refusal to be the partner and parent he should have been. The poverty had just been a consequence of that abandonment, not the cause of it. "I've been chasing the wrong thing my whole life," Vanessa said slowly, the realization settling over her like a heavy blanket. "I've been trying to fix the wrong problem. I thought if I could just be rich, be secure, have money, everything else would fall into place. But that's not how it works, is it?" "No, baby, it's not," her mother said gently. "Money matters. I'm not saying it doesn't. Security matters. But they're not everything, and they're definitely not the most important thing. Connection matters. Love matters. Having work that means something, relationships that sustain you, a purpose beyond just accumulating resources. Those things matter just as much, if not more." "But how do I change?" Vanessa asked desperately. "How do I stop being this person? Fear drives everything I do, every choice I make. I don't know how to not be afraid of poverty." "You start by admitting you're afraid," her mother said, "which you just did. And then you start making different choices, one at a time, even when they're scary. You start building a life based on what you actually value, rather than what you think will keep you safe. You start taking risks on connection and purpose instead of just on financial gain. It won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight. But it's possible, baby. People change. You can change." After she hung up with her mother, Vanessa sat in her small apartment, really sat, and thought about her life for the first time in years. Not about her next move, or her next target, or her financial situation, but about who she was and who she wanted to become. What did she actually value? What did she want her life to be about? If money wasn't the primary consideration, if security wasn't the driving force, what would she do with her time and energy? The question felt revolutionary, opening up possibilities she had never allowed herself to consider. She would want meaningful work, she realized slowly. Something that helped people, that made a difference, that gave her a sense of purpose beyond just earning a paycheck. She had been good at her job at the department store, genuinely good at helping people find the right items, at understanding what would make them happy. But she had corrupted that skill by using it as a hunting ground for wealthy men, rather than as an end in itself. She would want real friendships, genuine connections with people who knew her honestly and liked her anyway. She had acquaintances and networking contacts, but no real friends, no one she could be vulnerable with, no one who truly knew her. That loneliness was a kind of poverty no amount of money could fix. She would want, maybe, to find real love. Not the transactional arrangement she had sought with Marcus, but genuine partnership with someone who saw her clearly and chose her anyway. Someone she chose for who they were rather than what they had. That possibility seemed both appealing and terrifying, requiring a vulnerability she had spent years avoiding. The realization was both freeing and overwhelming. Everything she had built her adult life around suddenly seemed hollow and meaningless. But the alternative, building a real life based on real values, seemed impossibly difficult and scary. It would mean being vulnerable, taking risks, accepting uncertainty. It would mean living without the safety net she had always thought she needed. But as Vanessa sat there in her small apartment, thinking about her failed marriage and her wasted years and the person she had become, she knew she had to try. Continuing as she was would mean a lifetime of loneliness and emptiness, of chasing security that would never bring happiness, of using people while never truly connecting with them. That future looked bleak and sad, and for the first time, Vanessa wanted something differently badly enough to risk the fear. Over the next month, Vanessa began making small changes. She signed up to volunteer at a literacy program, teaching adults to read one evening a week. It wasn't much, just a few hours, but it felt good in a way her department store job never had. Helping someone sound out a word, seeing their face light up when they successfully read a sentence, feeling like she was making a real difference in someone's life, it fed something in her soul that had been starving for years. She reached out to old friends she had neglected during her years of chasing wealthy men, people she had known in high school and college before she became so focused on money. Some ignored her messages, and she didn't blame them. But others responded with cautious warmth, willing to reconnect, to rebuild friendships she had abandoned. She started meeting them for coffee or walks in the park, having conversations that weren't calculated or strategic, just genuine human interaction. She also started therapy, recognizing that she needed professional help to understand and change the patterns that had controlled her life for so long. Her therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Patterson, helped her explore her fear of poverty, trace it back to specific experiences and beliefs, understand how it had shaped every choice she made. It's not unusual, Dr. Patterson explained during one session, for childhood trauma around scarcity to create this kind of hypervigilance around money and security. Your brain learned early that poverty was dangerous, and it's been trying to protect you from that danger ever since. The problem is, the protective mechanisms that served you as a child are now preventing you from having the kind of adult life you actually want. So, how do I reprogram my brain? Vanessa asked. How do I stop being so afraid? You don't stop being afraid, Dr. Patterson said. Fear is information, and sometimes it's useful information. But you learn to recognize when fear is protecting you from real danger versus when it's protecting you from imagined danger or preventing you from having things you actually need, like connection and intimacy and purpose. You learn to act despite the fear, to make choices based on your values rather than just your anxiety. The work was hard, often painfully so. Vanessa had to confront parts of herself she had been avoiding for years, had to acknowledge the hurt she had caused others and herself, had to sit with uncomfortable emotions instead of distracting herself with schemes and strategies. But it was also liberating, helping her understand why she had made the choices she had, and empowering her to make different ones going forward. Slowly, over months, Vanessa began to change. Not in dramatic, sudden ways, but in small, consistent, cumulative ones. She found she actually enjoyed her volunteer work, looked forward to it each week, felt genuine satisfaction from helping people learn. She started thinking about possibly going back to school herself, maybe getting a degree in education or social work, pursuing work that had meaning beyond just financial compensation. She also found herself thinking about Marcus often, not with regret about the lost wealth, but with curiosity about how he was doing. Was he managing to rebuild his life? Was he finding work? Had he recovered emotionally from their disastrous marriage? She felt guilty about how she had treated him, about her cold dismissal of his feelings, about her inability to see his genuine love beneath her focus on his finances. 6 months after she had left him, Vanessa decided to write Marcus a letter. Not to ask for anything or try to reconnect romantically, but simply to apologize, to acknowledge her mistakes, to let him know she understood now what he had been trying to tell her. She wrote and rewrote the letter over several days, trying to find words that were honest without being self-pitying, apologetic without being manipulative. "Dear Marcus," she finally wrote, "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and I completely understand if you throw this letter away without reading it. But I needed to try to say some things I should have said when we were together, things I couldn't say then because I didn't understand them yet. You were right about me. I was so afraid of poverty that I made myself poor in all the ways that actually matter. I chased security so desperately that I destroyed any chance of genuine connection. I used people, including you, treating them as means to an end rather than as valuable in themselves. I'm not proud of who I was, and I'm genuinely sorry for the pain I caused you. I know my apology doesn't fix anything or undo the hurt. You deserved honesty from the beginning, deserved a partner who valued you for who you were rather than what you had. Instead, you got me, someone so damaged by her past that she couldn't see value in anything except money and security. That was wrong, and I take full responsibility for it. I want you to know that your words, as painful as they were to hear, changed me. They forced me to examine my life and my choices in ways I had been avoiding for years. I've started therapy, started volunteering, started trying to build a life based on purpose and connection rather than just financial accumulation. It's hard, and I'm not perfect at it, but I'm trying. I'm trying to become someone better than the person who hurt you. I hope you're doing well, that you're rebuilding, that you found peace and purpose in your new circumstances. I hope someday you find someone who can give you the kind of love and partnership you deserve, someone who values you for all the right reasons. You're a good person, Marcus, and you deserved so much better than what I gave you. Thank you for trying to show me a different way of living, even though I couldn't see it at the time. Thank you for your patience and your love, even though I didn't appreciate either. And thank you for having the courage to call me out on my selfishness and emptiness. It hurt, but it was necessary, and ultimately it may have saved me from a lifetime of chasing things that would never make me happy. I wish you all the best. I'm truly sorry for everything. Vanessa. She mailed the letter before she could second-guess herself, and then tried not to obsess about whether Marcus would read it or respond. She told herself she had written it for her own healing, as part of making amends for her mistakes, and that whether or not Marcus acknowledged it was beyond her control. 2 weeks later, she received a response. It was brief but kind, written in Marcus's familiar handwriting. Dear Vanessa, thank you for your letter. I appreciate your honesty and your apology. I'm glad you're working on yourself and finding purpose beyond money. I hope you continue to heal and grow. I'm doing well. I found work at a consulting firm, and I'm slowly paying down my debts. It's hard, but it's also been valuable in ways I didn't expect. Losing everything forced me to figure out who I am without wealth, which was painful but necessary. I don't regret our time together, despite how it ended. You taught me important lessons too, about honesty and vulnerability, and the importance of being real from the beginning. I hope we both take what we learned and use it to build better lives and better relationships going forward. I wish you all the best as well. Marcus. Vanessa read the letter 3 times, feeling grateful for his grace and his willingness to respond at all. She had hurt him deeply, yet he was still capable of kindness toward her. That generosity of spirit, she realized now, had been one of his best qualities, one she had completely failed to appreciate when they were together. A year after leaving Marcus, Vanessa had transformed her life in ways that would have seemed impossible before. She had enrolled in a teaching credential program at a local university, working toward her dream of becoming an elementary school teacher. It was a dream she had abandoned as a teenager, dismissing teaching as not lucrative enough, but now she recognized it as work that would give her life meaning and purpose. She was supporting herself with a combination of part-time work, student loans, and her savings. She had moved to an even smaller apartment to save money, gave up expensive clothes and dining out, learned to live on a budget again, and surprisingly, she didn't mind as much as she thought she would. The simplicity was actually freeing, removing the pressure to maintain an expensive lifestyle, allowing her to focus on things that actually mattered. She had built genuine friendships with people from her program and from her volunteer work. These were people who knew her honestly, who had seen her struggles and supported her growth, who valued her for who she was rather than what she could provide. She had deep conversations about teaching philosophy and social justice, movie nights with cheap pizza and laughter, study groups where they supported each other through difficult material. These relationships fed her soul in ways that networking events with wealthy people never had. She was also dating someone, a fellow student named James, who was funny and kind and completely broke, putting himself through school while supporting a younger sister. When she first met him, her old instincts had immediately dismissed him as not wealthy enough, not a viable option. But she had pushed past those instincts, agreed to get coffee with him, and discovered someone genuinely wonderful. James made her laugh with his terrible jokes and his optimistic view of life despite his own struggles. He listened when she talked about her fears and insecurities, offered support without judgment, valued her dreams, and encouraged her growth. He was affectionate and thoughtful in ways that had nothing to do with money, making her dinner in his tiny apartment, finding free events for them to attend together, writing her silly notes that made her smile. And Vanessa found, to her surprise, that she didn't care about his lack of money at all. She cared about how he treated her, how he made her feel, who he was as a person. Being with him felt easy and natural, not performative or calculated. She could be herself, completely herself, and he liked her anyway. That acceptance was worth more than any amount of wealth. She was happier than she had ever been, despite having less money than at any point in her adult life. She had purpose in her studies and her volunteer work. She had genuine relationships built on honesty and mutual care. She had dreams that were about who she wanted to become rather than what she wanted to accumulate. And she had learned, finally and fully, that her mother had been right all along. Money mattered, but it wasn't everything, wasn't even the most important thing. Her mother came to visit one evening and looked around the tiny studio apartment with satisfaction and something like pride. "This suits you," she said simply. "You look like yourself here, baby. You look happy." "I am happy," Vanessa agreed, and realized it was true. I'm broke and stressed about school and worried about finding a teaching job after graduation, but I'm genuinely happy in a way I never was when I was chasing wealthy men. That's because you're living according to your values now, her mother said wisely. You're doing work that matters to you, building relationships that sustain you, becoming who you're meant to be rather than who you think will be safe. That's what creates real happiness, not money or security or any of that. Do you ever regret it? Vanessa asked. The choices you made, marrying for love, even though dad turned out to be unreliable, struggling for so many years? Her mother considered this carefully. I regret your father's choices, not my own. I regret that he wasn't the partner he should have been, that he left us, that his addiction controlled him. But I don't regret loving him or having you. Love wasn't the problem, honey. His failure to be responsible and present was the problem. And yes, we struggled financially, but we also had real connection and purpose. I wouldn't trade that for all the money in the world. Vanessa felt tears prick her eyes. I wasted so many years, Mom. Years I could have spent building a real life, finding real love, doing meaningful work. Instead, I chased money and ended up with nothing. You didn't end up with nothing, her mother said firmly. You ended up with wisdom, hard-won wisdom about what actually matters. You ended up with the courage to change, to admit you were wrong and choose differently. That's not nothing, baby. That's everything. Some people spend their whole lives making the same mistakes, never learning, never growing. You learned. You changed. You're building a life worth living now. That's something to be proud of. 2 years after her divorce from Marcus was finalized, Vanessa received an unexpected invitation in the mail. It was to an art gallery opening featuring the work of Marcus Hamilton. She was surprised, hadn't known Marcus painted. But the invitation suggested his work had attracted serious attention, and she found herself curious about this side of him she had never known. She almost didn't go, wasn't sure if it would be appropriate or welcome. But curiosity and a desire to see how he was doing won out, and she found herself at the gallery on opening night. The space was modest but elegant, and the work displayed was genuinely impressive. Abstract pieces that captured emotion and movement in bold colors and sweeping lines. Paintings that felt alive and urgent and deeply felt. Marcus was there, talking to patrons and collectors, and Vanessa was struck by how different he looked. Not the polished, wealthy businessman she had married, but someone more authentic and grounded. He wore simple clothes, nice but not expensive, and he moved with a different kind of confidence than before. Not the confidence of wealth and status, but the confidence of someone who had faced his demons and survived, who had rebuilt from nothing and found meaning in the process. When he saw Vanessa, his face showed surprise, but also genuine pleasure. He excused himself from the group he was talking to and walked over to her, smiling warmly. "You came," he said. "I'm so glad. I wasn't sure if you would." "Your work is beautiful," Vanessa said honestly, gesturing to the paintings around them. "I had no idea you were an artist. This is amazing, Marcus." He laughed, a self-deprecating sound. "I didn't either, really. I mean, I used to paint years ago, before business school, but I gave it up when I got serious about making money. Losing everything gave me time to rediscover it, and it turns out this is what I'm actually good at, what actually makes me happy." "I'm teaching now," Vanessa offered. "Elementary school, 2nd grade. It's chaotic and exhausting, and I absolutely love it. Every day is an adventure." "That's wonderful," Marcus said warmly, his pleasure genuine. "I knew you'd be great at that. You have that gift of really seeing people, understanding what they need. That must serve you well with children." They talked for a while, easy conversation between two people who had shared something significant and had both grown tremendously from it. Marcus told her about his art, about how creating brought him peace and purpose in a way making money never had, about the freedom of expressing himself honestly without worrying about returns or profits. Vanessa told him about her students, about the joy of helping children learn and discover, about the meaningful challenge of reaching kids who struggled. "I'm glad we're both doing well," Marcus said eventually. "I'm glad we both found our way to something real." "Me too," Vanessa agreed. "And Marcus, I want you to know I meant everything I said in my letter. I'm genuinely sorry for how I treated you, for not being able to see your value, for prioritizing money over everything else. You deserved so much better." "We both made mistakes," Marcus said gently. "I should have been honest about my financial situation from the beginning. I shouldn't have trapped you in a marriage based on deception, no matter how good my intentions were. We were both wrong, both hurt each other, both learned from it. That's life, I guess." Before she left, Vanessa impulsively hugged him, and Marcus hugged her back. It was a friendly embrace between two people who had once been married, however briefly and disastrously, but who had both emerged as better versions of themselves. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For being honest with me, even when it was hard to hear. For showing me through your example that life could be about more than money. For being kind to me tonight when you had every right to be bitter or angry. For growing into this person who makes beautiful art and seems genuinely at peace." "Thank you too," Marcus said. "For having the courage to change, for admitting you were wrong and choosing differently, for becoming someone who teaches children and builds real relationships. That takes real strength, Vanessa." She left the gallery feeling something like peace, like a chapter of her life had finally closed properly. She drove to her small apartment in her old car, and instead of feeling ashamed or disappointed about her modest circumstances, she felt grateful. Grateful for the hard lessons she had learned, for the person she was becoming, for the life she was building brick by brick. Her story, the story of the gold digger who married a rich man and discovered he was bankrupt, could have ended in bitterness and regret. But instead, it became a story of growth and transformation, of learning what really mattered, of finding the courage to change, even when it was terrifying. Years later, when Vanessa was an experienced teacher with her own classroom and a life full of meaning and purpose, she would sometimes tell a version of her story to colleagues or friends who were struggling with their own priorities and choices. She never shared all the details, kept the specifics private, but she talked about learning that money couldn't buy happiness, that security came from within rather than from bank accounts, that the richest life was one filled with purpose and connection and growth. And sometimes, late at night when she was alone with her thoughts, Vanessa would think about Marcus and feel grateful for their disastrous marriage. Grateful because that disaster had forced her to confront herself, to recognize that she was chasing things that would never satisfy her, to understand that she needed to build a different kind of life entirely. The bankruptcy that had seemed like the worst thing that could happen had actually been a gift, painful but necessary, pushing her toward growth she would never have chosen but desperately needed. She had lost the wealthy life she thought she wanted, but she had gained something far more valuable: authentic connection, meaningful purpose, and peace with who she was. The gold digger had learned that real wealth had nothing to do with bank accounts and everything to do with who you were, what you did, and how you treated people. It was a lesson she carried with her every day, in every choice she made, in every relationship she built. And though the path to that understanding had been painful and humiliating and hard, Vanessa wouldn't change it now. because that path had made her who she was, had given her the wisdom and compassion she brought to her teaching, had taught her what really mattered in life. And that understanding, that hard-won wisdom, was worth more than all the money Marcus had pretended to have, worth more than any amount of material wealth. She had married for money and discovered there was none. But in that discovery, she had found something far more valuable: herself, her purpose, her path to genuine happiness. And that, in the end, was the greatest treasure of all.